give the explanation of the microphone. They don't have to do anything, and they don't have to be close. Do you give the lecture?
So how do you want to see it? What order? Any order.
Grab a chair. I think I'm going to change up here. I'm going to stop here. Start off with the we can do that.
It was on my list, but if you want to ask them, that'd be great.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, little housekeeping. We already heard in the lobby. Would you please turn off your phone so we have a silver alert, kind of light the whole place up? That would be greatly appreciated. First off, I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. My name is Joe Lewis, and I am the owner and general manager of Mount Dora Boating Center. I am also serving as chairman of the Mount Dora Citizens for Progress. We're here this evening because in 19 days, our citizens are going to be asked to make a very important decision. On November the 8th, we're going to decide if ordinance number 2022-08, restricting building heights in the Building Heights Impact District, should be amended into our city charter. The decision will be made with a simple yes or no vote. While the question is simple, the possible long-term ramifications and consequences are not quite as simple. There's a lot to consider, and because these are very big issues. Every voter should be given, provided the information needed to make an informed decision. And that is the sole mission of Mount Dora Citizens for Progress. As I said, and that's kind of the reason we're gathered here this evening. So before I dive in, I would like to introduce our panel, starting with Leslie.
It's on.
Good evening, my name is Leslie Campio, and
Maybe we'll start with Harmon.
all right, let's try again. There we go. All right. Okay, my name is Leslie Campione, and I am a business owner in Mount Dora, and I have a law practice on Fifth Avenue. I'm also serving as a Lake County Commissioner for District 4. Before I became a county commissioner, I represented several local governments in Lake County, and my area of practice was land use law, environmental law, and local government law.
Good evening. There you go. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Cal Rolfson. I'm a city council member and finishing my 8th year. I came from the great state of North Dakota 20 years ago. Shirley and I did, where I was a state's attorney, served as a city attorney for 2 cities, and was served 4 attorneys general as a deputy attorney general and chief of the criminal division. And did that for 20 years, and then I was in private practice where I did legislative lobbying and complex civil litigation. I've been elected to my, as I'll mention, my 5th term, but this is a 4-year term because they changed the city charter here to call for 4-year terms, which I supported. And I'm pleased to be here tonight. I'm going to talk about giving you a little Civics 101 comment from my personal view, and this is my personal view as a city council member, not for the city council, which I'll explain. Thank you very much.
Okay, my name's Nick Jerome. No, my name's John Tucker. I've lived in Mount Dora with my bride for the past 22 years. Have owned 3 businesses in town, been part owners of 3 businesses in town since 2013. Prior to my retirement in 2005, I was in federal law enforcement for 30 years. After that 2005 era, I went to work for an insurance company, hitting up their fraud unit on our workers' compensation claims. And I was lucky enough and happy enough to serve the citizens of Mount Dora for 4 years when I was on city council from 2016 to 2020. It's been a good run and a good time in Mount Dora. And I'm going to be talking about a parking garage. Everyone seems to want to talk about parking garages. So I've been doing a little research, and I'll let you know what I found out in about 40 minutes. So thank you.
Good evening. My name is Nick Jerome. I'm former mayor, City of Mount Dora. Also served on council and as a at-large representative for the city. Been here in Mount Dora since 2010. Live in the lakes of Mount Dora. And I have a graduate degree in school business administration, and which doesn't mean anything about for civic duty, but it helps out a little bit. But anyway, I'm glad you're all here tonight and to listen to what we have to say, and I will be talking a little bit about smart growth and smart controls. Thank you.
My name is Harmon Massey. I thank you all for coming to hear us out this evening. I'm a product of 28 years in the Air Force. I spent 9 years as a pilot flying B-52s in the Vietnam era, and resigned in '73 when the war was winding down, and used my GI Bill to go to law school. After law school, I called the Air Force and asked them to consider recalling me to active duty, and they did, and I spent 19 more years as a judge advocate in the Air Force for that total of 28. I spent 3.5 years in private practice in Fort Walton Beach. I retired from Air Force Special Operations Command at Hurlburt Field near Fort Walton Beach. And then I got a chance to work in the state attorney's office. I was an assistant state attorney for 9 years in the 1st Judicial District in the Pensacola area. We took a sabbatical for 7 years and went to my home state to assist youngest daughter raising 2 boys who played every sport that had a ball. And we did grandparent duties until they met girls and got driver's license, and we returned to Florida when that happened. I've been in Mount Dora since 2015. I have had the pleasure and honor of serving as a council member in Mount Dora for 4 years, 2017 through 2019. I currently serve on the Planning and Zoning Commission and on the board for Lake Cares. That's me. My wife and I recently moved into Waterman Village, Lakeside, the new addition, and it's a marvelous place. It's nice to still be a part of the community. Thank you all. Oh, by the way, I'll talk about tax considerations in just a few moments.
Well, thank you very much. Before we get started, I want to say one thing. Everyone I've spoken to on this issue, regardless of which side you are on, has our city's best interest at heart. You know, we are an iconic historic city built on the side of a hill that overlooks a gorgeous body of water. It's a place like no other in Florida. No one, and I repeat, no one wants to see high-rise buildings in our downtown or our lakefront. We all cherish our town, and we want to see it continue to prosper. We have different ideas and different views of how to accomplish that, and that's okay. What's most important is that we remember that we're all Mount Dorians, and regardless of how this vote goes on November the 8th, we're all going to wake up Wednesday morning on the 9th, and we're still going to be neighbors. With that in mind, I'm asking that we please keep the quorum tonight courteous and respectful, and we'll please refrain from cheering or outbursts or making any auditory remarks. We ask that you refrain from applause. We have no position buttons or signage or promotional clothing have been allowed in the auditorium, and I thank you very, very much for granting that request. Excluding myself, I think we've assembled some rather well-respected community leaders here tonight for you to hear from on the issues. And again, I would greatly appreciate you giving them the respect and courtesy I think that they've earned. So let's talk about the question at hand. If we have something that will work for me, there it is. So here's the question that's going to be on the ballot. A yes vote for the amendment to the city charter which limits building heights to 35 feet in the Building Heights Impact District and to 25 feet within 100 feet of the high water control level of Lake Dora, excluding certain structural appurtenance, and I had to practice that word several times, and providing exceptions for existing legal non-conforming structures and variance capabilities not to exceed additional 5 feet, or vote no if you do not want the city charter amendment which limits building heights. So, the ordinance number 2022-08 was passed and adopted by City Council on June the 7th of 2022. This is the ordinance that will be amended to the city charter should a yes vote carry the day on November the 8th. If you haven't read it, we had copies of it in the lobby. I understand most of you did pick it up. The ordinance is broken down into 5 parts. Part A, which is shown here on the screen, is the one that actually identifies the area that will be affected. It's shown here and defines the slide and identifies what the Building Heights Impact District will be. Okay, come on, help me out, Kevin. There he goes. Here's the map. It follows the same lines as the Historic Preservation Review area. Plus, it adds the shoreline of Lake Dora from Boathouse Row all the way to Simpson's Cove and past the lighthouse. The red square that you see is the area most referred to as the historic downtown. Many believe that this is the only area that will be affected by the ordinance. In fact, the area is much larger. This is the language that sets building heights to no greater than 35 feet in the new Building Heights Impact District. It stretches from 11th Avenue to Lake Dora and from Helen Street East and including both sides of Highland Street. It's a big piece of real estate. This details 25 feet within 100 feet of Lake Dora shoreline. It basically covers all of Mount Dora shoreline, developed or undeveloped. And we're going to talk more about that undeveloped piece in a little bit. This article grandfathers in existing building and structures. It allows non-conforming structures and buildings to be rebuilt should they be destroyed. This is one provision that I personally have questions about since it will cover my 33-year-old structures, my storage buildings, and at some point those buildings are going to be dismantled and have to be replaced. This language sets the 5-foot variance allowance. Any variance above that which would have the referendum vote approval. So at this current state, there would be an allowance for a 5-foot variance. However, if any developer or anybody else that wanted to build a building wanted to go above that 5 feet, their language is may only be revised if a proposed revision is submitted to the electors during a general election and approved by majority vote. So that's the cliff notes of the ordinance and the proposed amendment to the city charter. So again, we've gotten copies distributed, so if you have any questions about any of that, we'll be more than happy to answer that. But now it's about enough of me. I would like to now introduce Rachel O'Ryan. And Rachel is the president of Mount Dora's Chamber of Commerce and a very great contributor to our community. I personally have had the pleasure of working with Rachel over many years on many projects. So Rachel's going to take it from here as the MC for our evening, and I'd like to welcome Rachel to the podium now.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. As Joe said, I am the current president of the Mount Dora Chamber, and I have been as such since August of 2019. However, I was a volunteer back in the 90s at the Chamber, and I was on the board for two terms until 2004. Historically and around the country, local chambers are known as information sources for residents. We get weekly questions, you wouldn't believe them, but weekly questions from our residents saying, where do I get phone books? What organization should I donate my money to that really will use it for what they say? And with this festival this weekend, where can I park? How can I get to my favorite restaurant or business? So to my knowledge, historically, the Chamber has always had some kind of a forum or a gathering where citizens, residents, business owners could ask questions, and specifically to a candidate or candidate forum. In 2021, it was my first year at being in an election cycle. So we had a forum where we invited both the mayoral candidates at the time and the District 1's council seat candidates at the time. We held it here. We had questions that were submitted by the audience in advance, and as well as questions that were submitted in person. So at the beginning of August, we started to get questions at the Chamber, numerous questions. Hey, can you tell us what's going on with this height thing? What does it really mean? What do we have to do about it? Is it really true that the buildings do this or the buildings do that and the developers do this? And we just went, wow, there's so many questions that our citizens are asking us that we at the Chamber said we'd like to do a forum. At that time, we heard some rumblings. We knew there was one group called the Preserve Historic Mount Dora, and we heard that there was another group coming online called Mount Dora Citizens for Progress. It wasn't until probably early September where I started, early to mid-September, started seeing some Facebook interaction from people. So I reached out to both groups. I did it through the messenger on Facebook. I invited them both the same evening, the same time, asked them to be part of this forum, to come together. It was clear to me that both sides were very passionate about this subject, and it was equally as important the citizens wanted some answers. One group said they would, the other group said they would not participate. So instead of doing a forum to a traditional extent, I was asked if I would at least come and MC, one to set the record straight of why the Chamber is involved. We, at the Chamber, are absolutely feel it's important to remain neutral on political issues. I have been a citizen of Mount Dora for 25 years. I've worked here since 1990, so another 5 years. So I'm not just a new kid on the block. I know, I live Mount Dora. I love Mount Dora. I share Mount Dora with all who wants to listen, especially now at the chamber. So right now, my whole goal and my objective for the evening is that I am here to ask questions of the people who are here to present to you. We have, as we said, they asked questions to be emailed to them, and they also asked for questions for people here coming tonight. The questions on this side of my table are questions that were asked from tonight, who wrote questions. Those are the first questions we're going to be answering since you're here and took the time out of your evening to come. We want to make sure you get your answers answered. Then I have another stack of questions of those who came through email, and if we have time permitting, we will go ahead and ask those questions as well. So with that, I'm going to say, let's get started. Our first speaker is Cal Rolfson, and the things he's going to be discussing is, what is a city charter?
Thank you, Rachel.
Pardon?
As you all may know, I've served 8 years on the Mount Dora City Council. It's been my pleasure to do that. And I've recently been elected to or will be elected without opposition to my 5th term, the first 4-year term. However, I want to make it clear tonight, I do not represent any position of the city. I do not appear as your city council member. My comments are only my own, but anyone searching my public comments as a city council member on this subject will see consistencies with what I expressed tonight. I have also cleared my presence here with our city attorney, which I routinely do just in case. I have been asked to give some history behind how we got to this point and my personal view of the logic behind the petitioner's efforts. The public history behind this effort shows that it was flawed from the beginning. And rather than seeking a proper course through private legal advice or other means, there was an attempt to force the city to acquiesce. This is a state law now, section 163.3167 of the Florida statutes is bluntly clear, and I'm going to quote it. Quote, an initiative or referendum process in regard to any development order is prohibited, period, end quote. A development order is any order typically done by the city council, granting, denying, or granting with conditions an application for a development permit. And any development in Mount Dora must first receive a development permit, whether in the historic district or not, in order to build anything. That's the process. With that in mind, I want to review, with apologies for you being a 7th grade teacher at this time, but I want to do it just so you all know, some 7th grade civics. Constitutions frame, form, and create governments. They are approved by the voters. Once the voters approve a constitution, the government entities created by that constitution take over and do their assigned jobs. Passing laws, which is the legislative branch, enforcing laws, which is the executive branch, and ensuring the legality and constitutionality of those laws, which is, of course, the judicial branches, our 3 tripartite branches of government. We know this form of government as a constitutional democracy, or a democratic republic, or a constitutional republic, or by various other names. In Florida, all cities, to my knowledge, create their governments through a charter. That's the same as our Constitution. A city charter is just like a constitution. It frames government, and as the state and federal governments do for their constitutions. The charter framing city government is also voted upon and approved by the people of each city, and it sets out the framework of city government. In Mount Dora, for example, our city charter sets out that there will be 7 elected council members currently from 5 established geographic districts. Voters of Mount Dora recently voted to change our city structure through a change in the charter from 4 geographic districts, 2 running at large and the mayor running at large, and now to only 1 running at large, 5 districts and 1 running at large, plus the mayor running at large. And that is what we call, at the state level, home rule. We have, and I'll get into that a little bit later. So what's wrong with the petition effort, in my view? Why do I oppose and have always opposed the petition process in this particular case? If it's certainly not that I don't want voters to approve charter changes, that's totally opposite of my belief. I fully support the process. However, the matter they are seeking to put in our charter now is already in our city ordinances, and it has been for the past 30 years. Namely, for the past 30 years, our land development code, part of our city ordinances, has consistently prohibited no building heights taller than 35 feet or no taller than 25 feet within 100 feet of Lake Dora. In other words, the petitioners are seeking to put into what established is as established law or city ordinances. They want to put that in our Constitution. I've always found that a little odd and weird that that's kind of a way, we don't want the city council to do anything. We want it to stay just as it is, and you can't change with the times and so forth. That takes the on-the-scene, day-to-day decision-making ability away from your elected representatives, the city council, and places it in the narrow and decision-making ability in the hands of voters who usually have little or no collective ability or duty to analyze, question, grant, or deny any building height variance when the best interests of the city may clearly require it. Voters are being asked here to make a complex planning decision. Typically, they do not have professional city planning training or experience. Having planners guide the development in this sensitive area of city growth is vital. That's why the city employs professional planners with 20s and 30 years of experience doing city planning, which is extremely complex in its own right, plus legally complex. If any proposed development in downtown's historic district that may be good for the city, but is 1 foot, not to consider the variances because of chimneys or whatever, but is 1 foot above the 35-foot height set in the petition's charter amendment proposal, the city council is absolutely prohibited by even putting it on the council's agenda for discussion. And it stops any citizen or group who may want to have it considered from even looking at it and discussing it. It's done. Anything like that is done if it goes 35 feet or 36 feet, rather, above the charter, above the petition. In my view, this is very poor constitutional democracy. In my view, to put the city, state, or federal laws in their respective constitutions or charters is wrong and very poor government. It is simply poor city government structure to put ordinances in charters. That's the city council's fixed responsibility according to our current city charter. This petition creates a kind of a mishmash of legal issues that is not necessary and may never and be very costly to defending. So how did we get to this weird, what I call a weird issue on our ballot? Way back in July of 2020, they tried to get this city council to approve their first effort back then, seeking the taxpayers to fund the cost of this election, which is typically about $20,000 to do an election just in our city. The draft petition was legally flawed according to our city attorney, and the council unanimously did not consider it for that reason. Several months later, they again sought to have this petition considered by the council, and again, it was legally flawed and did not comply with state law. And was again considered by the council, and finally, it was not considered by the council. And finally, a third attempt was to send it to the council after changing the petition wording. After being assured by our city attorney that the legal flaws had been corrected, it just strictly became city council policy whether or not this issue would be put on the upcoming general ballot. It passed by a city council vote of 5-2, and I consistently opposed this and was one of the no votes. The entire city council in Mount Dora and the city councils and commissions throughout Florida consistently support concepts of home rule. And that's under Article 8, Section 2B of the Florida Constitution, giving home rule powers, independent powers, to city councils and commissions. Yet now these petitioners, if successful, are seeking to act like a legislature, taking away concepts of home rule by stopping our city council from ever considering any building height variance that everyone may agree may be in the best interest of the historic district and for the best interest of the city's tax base. Only responsible development should be considered. The only way to change it back to its current status quo if this petition passes would be to have a $20,000, give or take, election at taxpayer expense to get it back. So it's fairly permanent. If this petition is approved by the voters, Mount Dora will be among only 6 cities of 411 cities in Florida that chase windmills where none really exist. The petition effort, in my view, my words, is a solution looking for a problem. We have exactly the same protection currently in our city law, our ordinances, that the petitioners are seeking to add to our city charter. Again, it's a solution seeking a problem that does not exist. Let the city council do the work for which it was elected. Let the city council do that, and don't presume that they are not listening or don't have the city's best interests in mind. For the past 30 years or so, they have listened, and as far as I know, have not granted any variance above the 35 feet in the building heights in the historic district. It's not happened. So that's why I say it's a solution looking for a problem. I am honored to be able to speak to you tonight, and it's only my view, but it's been consistent throughout my tenure on the city council on this issue, and I'd be welcome to respond, Rebecca, to any questions later.
I have some questions for you.
Sure.
So I have 3 for the audience that we think will be best suited for you. Why do we need a charter amendment versus handling via the regulation?
The answer, in my view, is we don't. We don't need a charter amendment to do this. Did you say charter amendment? Yes.
That was the question.
Good.
Why do we need
Yes.
a charter amendment versus handling via regulation?
Right, and I've explained all of that to the best of my ability in my comments. We have already everything that this charter asks us to approve with a yes vote. We already have that in our city ordinances. That's our city law, period. And our law that law can be changed by the city council. They can grant a variance by the city council, but that's why I say we have this, to grant a variance, there has to be overwhelming evidence that additional 1 foot above 35 feet, or 4 feet, or 10 feet is absolutely necessary and vital to the continuation of our downtown district, the historic aspect of it, and all of that. It can only be done with significant, and it would take probably, most ordinances, development ordinances that we develop, take a year, perhaps. It can't be done within 6 months. Every hearing that we have to change or vary anything is with public notice, 2 hearings, and many, many changes that are recommended by our planning director's office. So the answer, short answer to the question, Rachel, is we don't need one.
Okay.
In my view.
Okay, why did the city form a height advisory committee in the first place?
Thank you. We formed that. There were professionals on there and citizens that didn't have interests in Mount Dora in downtown, or many of them did. And it was formed because there was an uproar that there was going to be, that there may be some more pressure to build something taller than 35 feet. And so rather than have the city council just deal with that with public input, we decided to create a committee. I think it was 13 people on the committee. Some professionals, some downtown landowners, business owners, and citizens. And when we created that committee, we wanted their input to us. The city council has, I believe it's 7 or so advisory boards that are regular advisory boards: Planning and Zoning Commission, Parks Advisory Board, Historic Preservation Board, and there are others. And we use advisory boards in order to help give us guidance. They're all members of the public. And all of those meetings are held with public notice and opportunity for every citizen to come in and express their view, every time. There's nothing that we do that is not in the sunshine of Florida. And if we did something else that's not, we'd be in trouble criminally, because we have sunshine laws that guide us and require us to have public input at all of our meetings. So that's why we did that, is to get additional input in addition to those that might come and appear before us. But they'd studied it, and we were happy to receive that, and I don't think there were any objections to doing that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And forgive me, I'm going to try to figure this one out. Deb, excuse me if I muddle it. Why can't we vote on each rather than one vote for all? I'm trying to figure out if that means can't we vote individually? Deb, I don't want to put you on the spot. I'm not saying your last name. If you'd like to clarify that for me?
Maybe they're thinking, like, for each application that comes in, have the public weigh in on whether they think there should be.
I can answer that.
Maybe that's what the question is.
So unless I hear from Deb, we're going to assume that that's what she means. Yes, thank you very much.
Very good. Every member of the public, to repeat what I'd said before, every member of the public on any request by a developer to do anything has to come before the city council. At every meeting of the city council, the public has an opportunity. If there's lines a mile long, we hear everybody that comes in. If it takes all day or all night, and you have an opportunity to express your view at the dais, you will have that opportunity by law, and plus by city ordinance. So to have a public vote on every single petition would probably be extremely costly, would undercut any council member's ability to decide this on behalf of the city, which is why you elect us. And so that's the first thing that comes to mind. We also have we have city planning folks that give advice to the city council. They're employees of the city, and they have reams, literally, of advice and columns and suggestions through through law and other means to give us advice as to why we want this way, this way, or that another way. And it would be extremely cumbersome, and I'm not sure that any developer would be able to successfully go through the process without significant public outcry or public support. So it fixes responsibility on the city council to do its job. And if I don't do my job, I should either be voted out the next time or recalled. You can always recall me. Feel free. There aren't any of us in there that are doing it for the pay, trust me. So that's the best answer I can give if that's the correct one.
Thank you, Cal.
Thank you, Rachel.
We're going to give your throat a little rest, and we're going to move on to the next subject, which is waterfront opportunity by Joe Lewis.
Thank you, Rachel. Is my mic on? My mic's on. So throughout time, people have been attracted to the water. We enjoy walking near it, we enjoy loving being on it, and we enjoy playing in it. Even more than that, Florida's history is connected to and intertwined with the water like no other state in the Union. As the story is told, it was the search for the fountain of youth that led Ponce de Leon to discover Florida in 1513. Sunshine and water were the key elements that led to Florida's development. That was recognized by Henry Flagler. They drove his development of railroads, hotels, and cities that turned the wilderness that we now call home, this paradise that we now call home. So therefore, what I'm trying to point out is that the water is also what brought people to Mount Dora. Our history began in 1846.
I don't know about that.
That's pretty cool. Do that again.
I'm trying to get away from it. I apologize.
Our history began in 1846 when Lake Dora was shown on an early government survey. In years to come, it became popular winter resort, or winter retreat, I should say, for hunters and fishermen and boaters. The Alexander House was built in 1893, and in 1903, the lake house was later renamed Lakeside Inn. It was this waterfront property that provided the economic stimulus which grew the city of Mount Dora. It's this portion of the original property that could be a big part of Mount Dora's continued economic success. So as I said, Florida's and Mount Dora's historic connection to the water is undeniable. Look anywhere and you're going to see millions of examples. Even when hurricanes blow us off the water, we come right back. It's just in our DNA. In 2011, help me out here, Kev. There it is. The city began a year-long process to reevaluate plans and policies, engaging the public with the opportunity to effect change in that direction if they so desired. Through the series of focus groups, citizen public forums, committees, and city council meetings, a redefined vision for the future of Mount Dora was developed. The cumulative of all these efforts was the Envision Mount Dora citywide visioning study. It reaffirmed what history has shown us. People want to be near the water. Lake Dora was the waterfront, the Lake Dora waterfront was identified as the prime opportunity to enhance the city's livability while providing economic viability. Sensible development, linking the downtown with the lakefront to better integrate hospitality, retail, recreational activities that promote the city as a unique destination was identified as the opportunity. Taking our dynamic and diverse downtown core that attracts both tourists and residents on a regular basis and bring them to the water was the goal. The same finding was again identified in the 2020 Vision Update and the evaluation and appraisal report. Lake Dora is an amazing benefit. There it is. Lake Dora is an amazing benefit that as tourist attraction, as residential recreational amenities, and a community focal point. It's also a great environmental resource. So in both the Envision 2011 and the 2020 updates, Pineapple Point, originally part of Lakeside's Inn property, was identified as the primary parcel for development. Yet, for the past 10 years, nothing has happened. So why is that? Some reasons are discussed in both Envision Implementation Plan and the Vision Update, a VA report. In the Envision Comprehensive Plan and Land Development Code issues, number 2, building heights. Mount Dora should consider modifying its existing citywide 35-foot height limit in the downtown district and specific areas adjacent to the district. While this limit helps maintain the small town, quaint village feel that many people value, it represents a critical constraint on the ability of the downtown to sustain its long-term economic viability. Downtown Mount Dora should not be home to very tall buildings, and the market is not likely to be there in the future. Therefore, a strategic and limited adjustment to its height limits appears warranted to promote new economic investment that would help the city residents realize a more diverse downtown. The city should consider increasing height limits to 50 to 60 feet in areas such as Pineapple Point, the area north side of the railroad tracks between Baker Street and Tremaine Street, and the former Growers Cove Co-op, which is south of Highland Street. These areas represent the potential market-driven opportunities for investment that could be key ingredients towards helping downtown Mount Dora capitalize on its unique location and iconic image. Again, in the 2020 vision update, it talks about Mount Dora and the views of Lake Dora. And restricting heights on the buildings may potentially preserve lakefront views, but it also limits the viability of redevelopment in these areas, the downtown, where it's most appropriate and most needed. So let's explore for a moment the aspect of those lake views. So this is the view from the corner of Charles Avenue and Donnelly Street. It's 1 block from Lake Dora, yet currently today, there is no view. This is the shoreline, which a lot of people don't see because it can only be seen from the water. Arguably, the most prime waterfront property in all of Lake County today is a wilderness. 2 blocks from downtown Mount Dora, yet no one can see the lake or enjoy walking on the shoreline. Just imagine what the possibilities are, what a wonderful downtown waterfront destination this could become. With sensible development, no high-rise condos, dining, shopping, residential, parking could all be possibilities. So then, why would 25 feet within 100 feet of the shoreline of Lake Dora make sense? Well, it's certainly not because there are no buildings that tall now. Both Shadow Harbor and Lakeside Inn have buildings taller than 25 feet. The storage buildings on my facility are 45 feet to 50 feet, depending upon what part of the property you measure them from. Yet from Charles Avenue, they are less than 23 feet. This speaks to the unique topological advantage that Mount Dora has and why each project should be considered on an individual basis, as they are today. In the 33 years I've lived here, Mount Dora has seen little waterfront development. There hasn't been any in the last 10 years. So the question I pose is, could the 25-foot building height restriction within 100 feet of Lake Dora shoreline be an obstacle to sensible development? The answer to that question needs to be known long before we consider amending the city charter. To include an arbitrary height in the city charter before that question is answered is simply not a good idea. According to Albert Einstein, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Amending 25 feet building height restrictions in our city charter could make a difficult hindrance to sensible development an insurmountable obstacle. I'm not sure what old Albert would have said about making a hindrance insurmountable. But then again, maybe we do. Things that are infinite, and I'm not sure about the universe. So, if you want to preserve Mount Dora's history, bring people back to the water where it all began. And that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you.
To channel my inner Forrest Gump.
I have some questions from the audience. Does this amendment preclude the rebuilding of structures already over 35 feet?
That's an excellent question, and it's not clear. The wording in the ordinance says destroyed. Existing buildings that are non-conforming can be, if they are destroyed, may be replaced at their current height. In my situation, should I decide to dismantle those buildings and replace them with, would I be able to build them the same height? It's kind of a question mark.
Okay. What buildings within Mount Dora have a real historical significance?
Oh, there's several. Of course, there's the Lakeside Inn, which is, above the 35-foot height limit. There's the Donnelly House, which the most iconic, most identified, most historic structure in downtown Mount Dora is 42 feet. Goodness knows if old JP came back to visit us today and wanted to rebuild his iconic home, it couldn't be built because, if this passes, it couldn't be built because it's above 35 feet.
Thank you. Hopefully you can answer this. Who was on the Height Advisory Committee? Names, but more important, what constituents? Businesses, citizens who are opposed, developers, legal, land, we people? I can't read the last two words. I think that's what it says.
Well, that's all public record. You can go research that and find out who was on the committee. I don't know them all by name. I know a few of them. I've had a couple of them here on the panel. I thought, I was on the Building Heights Committee and served there for a while before my property became, part of the conversation, at which point I had to recuse myself. But I thought that the Building Heights Committee had been given its opportunity to really do its work and really vet the issue, really vet the problem, and come up with some solid suggestions, it would have been very, very beneficial. I'm proud to say that, I served with that committee with a number of folks. Some people that, we had differing opposing views on what should be done, but yet, through it all, we became friends, and I treasure that. So while I can't answer the question as specifically who was on it, I can tell you there are some members in the audience today, as well as some on the panel here with us today.
Okay. The waterfront restaurant, the previous one to be built, was refused by the town because of parking concerns.
And that is probably why the Pineapple Point property offers the best opportunity for a waterfront development, because there's enough property there that it can be self-contained. Parking is a big issue, which John's going to talk about here in a few minutes. But with that particular development, it could be a wonderful dining, residential, shopping, boardwalk on the waterfront. And, there's enough property, and if it's allowed to go higher, you could probably put some building with a parking facility kind of on the tennis courts by the Lakeside Inn.
Thank you. This is broad, but I'm going to ask how you can answer it. And Pam, I'm not going to say your last name, but if I'm not being clear and you want to reiterate, I'll let you. What is the difference between yes and no regarding outcome?
Well, real simple. If you vote yes, we're going to have some very, we're going to have some very strict building heights amended to our city charter, which, as I spoke about earlier, would be very, very difficult to build above. No would simply reverse everything back to the status quo, and the same protections that we have in our city code today would remain in place.
Thank you. We're going to give Joe a little break here, and we're going to move on to Nick Giron and your subject matter, keeping downtown vibrant and relevant.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Let me start by giving a definition of smart growth. And my definition comes from the Oxford Languages. Smart growth is planned economic and community development that attempts to curb urban sprawl and worsening environmental conditions. I got involved with Mount Dora politics in 2012, and when I ran and won a seat for the city council. I have since been involved in the city as a city council member, mayor, and a private citizen. During my campaign for office and any campaign by anyone else from 2012 to the present, I do not recall any candidate who was campaigning for sprawl. I believe that all the candidates would say, I want to maintain the charm and quaintness of Mount Dora. And they would add that they want controlled growth for Mount Dora. Smart growth, controlled growth, the same talking points. Small cities like Mount Dora have similar features. Rather than using head counts, small towns are often defined by characteristics such as a slower pace of life, family-oriented events, walkability, proximity to nature, and an authenticity that's not evident in larger places. Sounds like Mount Dora to me. I took a quick look at the envisioning plan that was approved some time ago. I will read the vision statement. The long-range vision of the city of Mount Dora is to create a diverse, vibrant, and sustainable community featuring a thriving downtown in conjunction with a more accessible and inviting lakefront, while respecting its historic character and small-town charm, and serving as a unique regional and local destination for both residents and visitors. Fortunately, Mount Dora is in an envious position both geographically and economically. In regards to growth, we need to work a two-pronged approach. The first is the vision, and the second is planning. Right now, our vision is limited to the city's boundaries and our joint planning agreements with surrounding cities and county. Included in that vision is to have an employment center, now called the Wolf Branch Innovation District. That area can produce technology and educational opportunities to future companies that want a piece of someplace special. However, right now I'm going to address our downtown area. As stated, Mount Dora has a long-term embedded vision to maintain the quaintness and charm of our downtown area. It is not a secret that our downtown is the key to attracting new residents and tourists to our city. Mount Dora has enjoyed for a long time a reputation that is well known and envied throughout the state. However, Mount Dora's size is limited. We are bordered by Orange County, along with the cities of Eustis and Tavares. Lake County also has open land on our borders and enclaves within our city. The city needs to take a progressive view of annexation as long as it conforms to our current and planned infrastructure. In the future, when Lake County wants to give up some of its land to the city, it should be considered by the city to take over that land. I believe that past planning was designed to handle a population of 25,000 people, including the Wolf Branch Innovation District. Years ago, Mount Dora fought a tough battle with Eustis over the annexation of the lakes of Mount Dora. Ultimately, Mount Dora won that battle, and along with the Country Club of Mount Dora, produce a huge cash flow for tax assessments and infrastructure needs for future projects. Growth in our city is inevitable. The city charter, like was mentioned earlier, is similar to the United States and the Florida Constitution. How we handle our charter has to be smart and controlled. A charter or a constitution outlines the elements of the government's actions that are etched in stone, unless the electorate decides differently, which is rare and cumbersome. Our charter defines how we are governed and determines the responsibility of the elected officials and the city manager. We have an advisory committees that meet and give advice to the council on how to fulfill their missions. The most important is the Planning and Zoning Advisory Committee. They are guided by the Land Development Code through our planning department. They both work on the premise of past practice and the right to seek variances when applicable. It is no secret that builders and developers generally shy away from Mount Dora because of our reputation of being extremely tough to conduct business. This is a good thing because we want what is best for our community and best within our ability to sustain a new project based on our codes. When there are disagreements, the projects can go through the variance procedure, which is really tough. If a builder makes it through that process, we can be assured that the project will benefit the city. When we involve the historical area, the city has a historical board, which also has a huge say in the project within its boundaries. My point is that when we place something in the charter, it becomes a must-do thing. It has to be done a certain way. The argument of why should we leave it to the politicians is just this. You elect the council and the mayor. You have control. Ask your questions before the vote. If the building height is in our land code and the project seeks a variance, there are a multitude of hearings for the public to put forth all of your comments, pro or con, to the committees and to the council. The envisioning plan has been a guiding force for the economic viability of this city. The plan even goes to identify target areas for special consideration. They are the downtown redevelopment area and historic district. The Envision plan made some strong statements in regard to the building heights in the targeted area. They made their statements based on sound marketing strategies that will allow for new economic investments and a more diversified downtown. They said that the downtown should not be home for very tall buildings, roughly over 50 feet. But certain areas in and around the downtown should allow for heights taller than the 35 foot. If the ballot question results in a majority of no votes, the downtown area will have the ability, through the current ordinances and codes, to allow for a strategic and limited adjustment to building heights, which will help to promote the new economic development that would help Mount Dora residents realize a more diversified downtown. This path also increases the marketability of the downtown. If the ballot question passes as written, the diversity and marketability will forever be lost because the builders and developers cannot wait for another charter amendment that would be in favor for them to build. Keeping the current method of codes and variances, the citizens' involvement is the only way to ensure that what we now enjoy. Downtown Mount Dora has come a long way from the dirt streets and the horse-drawn carriages of old. Some of our residents said, and I think even John Tucker just a little while ago said that our residents at a time that you can roll a bowling ball down Donnelly Street and never hit anything. The Building Heights Committee was working with our hands tied. When a referendum initiative obtains the required signatures and is certified, the council must act on it within 60 days of the certification date. The council never took the action within that time frame to allow the ballot referendum to go to the ballot or not be on the ballot. Instead, they decided to put together a committee to give the input. The committee's work took much longer than that 60-day time limit. This item was going to be put on the ballot regardless of any action from the committee. The committee's decision to recommend it being placed on the ballot was basically predetermined by the lack of the city council at the time. In light of what was recommended by the adopted envisioning plan, I believe that the ballot question that takes the planning department and the established committees out of the process for building height allowances would be a very bad idea. Taking the citizens out of any decision-making process can never be a good thing. It would only open up a Pandora's box. We need to keep our downtown vibrant, beautiful, relevant, and thriving. We need to keep our visitors coming in, our businesses prosperous, which is always in everybody's best interest. And I strongly recommend a no vote on this issue. And thank you.
Okay, Nick, I think two questions. Why does the amendment limit building heights to only 35 feet when a lot of pretty buildings downtown are already higher than that? Do you know?
Personally, I don't know, but I would have to assume that this always goes through the variance process since there are limits on the height buildings in the downtown. Anything more than that has to go through the variance process.
Okay. If a variance greater than 5 feet is pursued, then what steps need to be taken?
That I cannot answer.
Okay, so these are a couple audience questions. Is there anybody else here on the panel that could answer those two questions for us? Oh, wait a minute. Leslie,
Hello.
did you have something you want to add?
Well, I think the question was about the 5 feet. With the charter amendment, there's only an allowance for a 5-foot variance.
Appurtenances.
Right. You could have appurtenances, and you can have a variance up to 5 feet, and that's it.
Okay.
But you still have to meet a whole new variance procedure that's not the same variance procedure we have today, which I'm going to talk about in a little while, but that's what sets the city up for a gigantic lawsuit.
Okay. And can anybody answer the question, why does the amendment limit building heights to only 35 feet when a lot of pretty buildings downtown are already higher than that? Yes.
I can try to answer that. It's always been 35 feet, at least for the last 30 years that I can recall. And can you just go through that one question?
Yes. It says,
Second half.
why does the amendment, why does the amendment limit building heights to only 35 feet when a lot of pretty buildings downtown are already higher than that? The rest of it is who picked 35 feet and why?
Those 35, the buildings that are taller than 35 feet have been there, like the Mount Dora Donnelly building, okay, the Donnelly House. That exceeds that. The Lakeside Inn exceeds those numbers. So they've always been there, and there was never an attempt by the council to change that. They're historically kind of grandfathered in, as it were.
So I guess that's the question. Why is the amendment limit a building height to only 35 feet when we've had buildings built in Mount Dora that are more than 35 feet? So why is that a magic number? Is there an idea?
It's not a magic number. It's just been there. It's historic. It's never changed. And this petition is trying to limit that.
Okay, Harmon?
Personal
Yes.
comment,
I'm sorry?
a personal comment, and I'm a lawyer by trade. Think capricious and arbitrary.
There you go. On the Building Heights Committee, that question was brought up, what was the magic number, from 35? And in my involvement in city governments over the years and building heights in different areas, it's generally based on how your fire apparatus, how tall your fire apparatus can get to at the time. In the city I used to live in New Jersey, we learned a real strong lesson one time. We allowed a senior high-rise to be built to a 10-story limit, and unfortunately, when they had a fire on the 10th floor, our fire equipment could only reach the 9th floor. So it caused a lot of issues in that area and change of codes and building height restrictions in that city. So this is basically what a lot of times your building heights are restricted to.
Okay, go ahead.
One other thought, if you're hanging your hat on what the fire apparatus would reach in Mount Dora, understand what's wrong.
Your
Here you
mic's
go.
not on. Oh,
If you're concerned about the height the fire apparatus might reach in Mount Dora, understand that we have a ladder truck now that has a 100-foot reach.
but you're not saying we should do 100-foot buildings?
No.
Just making sure, yes.
To answer the question, though, the reason that was picked to be put on the charter and amended into the city charters because that is currently the building heights that is in code. But the question still remains, what is the wisdom of 35 feet in the downtown and 25 feet within 100 feet of Lake Dora shoreline? And again, when we have so many buildings in downtown, our most historic and quite frankly beautiful buildings that exceed those heights.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other, go
I
ahead.
just want to make a correction. I just now noticed my name is spelled wrong on there.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It is Girone.
I apologize, and I have it right on this
Just
list.
want to
so
make,
I'm
when you send
sorry,
your
Nick.
cards and letter later, I want you to have the right name on there. So.
Oh, we're going to move on to tax revenue considerations by Harmon Massey.
Thank you again, and I appreciate you all asking these questions. This is very important. I currently sit on planning and zoning. Understand that anything I may say does not represent planning and zoning, but rather are the thoughts that I have personally. I have regrets about this whole process. As Mr. Rawson indicated, I was on the council where this whole thing arose, and in my view, my personal opinion, this arose out of an honest effort to build a parking garage to help solve an age-old problem in Mount Dora. I run into many people who tell me I don't go downtown anymore because I don't have the time to go around the block time and time again to find a place to park. There was an effort to address that on the prior council on which I served, and in this very room, there was a discussion in a town hall forum on 2 different occasions where the communication broke down to screaming and shouting. It was very embarrassing. I regret the fact that we were never able to have this kind of intelligent conversation and discussion before this got to this point. I have, as an outgrowth of that time on council, been called a tall buildings guy. I am not a tall buildings guy. I did vote as a part of the council on that occasion to permit the city staff to engage upon discussions, enter into discussions with the only proposal that we got out of a nationwide request for a proposal to solve our parking problem. We got one response from a local developer. We were unable to continue further with the discussion because of the rancor that came up during that time, and the developer withdrew his proposal. We lost a golden opportunity to resolve an age-old problem, and that's what brings us here. I'm going to shorten the title of my speech and help you gain a little bit of time because as an attorney, I want to get to the point. I would title my part of this, which references tax revenue, as unintended consequences. Mr. Ralston told you some about the basis of the city charter. You've seen those signs that said the city name and chartered in such and such a date. That's our guiding star in city government. Do you know what the duty of a city is? Have you ever given that any thought? The duty of any city is to ensure the safety and well-being of its citizens and provide services which meet those needs and support quality of life, making that city a desirable place to live. Mount Dora has done a good job of that in my experience since 2015. Quality of life in Mount Dora has been very, very good. That is underscored by growth in our population, in our area, and in our budget. I'm sure that it's no surprise to you that the cost to cities has increased and likely continues to increase daily because it's increasing for all of us as we go to fuel our cars or buy groceries or pay for this, that, and the other. Everything seems to have added $1 or $2 or 10 to what we used to pay. That's where we are. Mount Dora has come to this circumstance. Let me illustrate part of that growth that you may not be aware of. The operating budget, or the true budget of Mount Dora, will stagger you if you have not followed that through the years. And when I talk about the operating budget or the true budget, I'm talking about dollars and cents that are taken out of the debt service and construction accounts, but the cost to run this government for a year. In 2019-2020, the budget for the true budget or the operating budget for Mount Dora was $95 million. Precisely 224,759. The budget for 2021 was $90,183,000. 21-22, the budget was $99,900,000. 22 and 23, wait for it, the budget is $134,119,000. The cost of government is going up every day. The funds for these city services come from property taxes and from service fees, and we're all paying more. Cities are obligated to operate on a balanced budget. You must understand that. We cannot spend more than we take in. Considering the increasing cost of providing services for that quality of life that we talked about, that is the city's obligation and duty, in these uncertain times, there needs to be a balance, a desirable balance between residential and commercial properties to help lighten that load for the property owner. That's important. That's part of the concept of developing and managing growth in your community. My concern, among many in this proposal, is that in a broad and inflexible building height limitation as is contemplated, you're going to find that it may adversely impact financial investment for the future, commercial development for the future, and shift a greater burden in that tax requirement to the residential homeowner, or necessitate a reduction in the level of services. That's a significant undertaking, and that's all a part of this question. One other thing that I want to say that's apart from my topic on taxes is that in currently serving on planning and zoning, you must understand that with this proposal and the accompanying ordinance, much of the function of planning and zoning will go away in terms of balancing the interest in the individual circumstances, because currently to get a variance from a building code circumstance, there are 7 steps that must be met. And there's public input, there is discussion, there's a balancing of the interest to consider the unique situation as in Joe described to you for his building heights. With the accompanying ordinance for this proposal, the variance steps increased to 9, making it almost impossible to get a variance. And if you're able to thread the needle through those 9 steps, you can only have 5 feet. Those are my personal concerns about where we find ourselves today for this fair city that I love and have enjoyed serving. Thank you.
Thank you. Will taxes go up because of this if it passes?
I think the answer is yes, but that's purely my personal answer because everything else is going up. And you now know where the source is, and you know that we're talking real dollars in this city budget. And if we don't work as a planning group to balance the interest of commercial and residential, it's going to fall on the backs of the residential.
Okay. If we limit the ability to develop more commercial space, how much tax revenue do we lose, and who will make up the difference?
I don't think there's any way to answer that because there's so many variables in that process. Thank you.
Okay. What will we give up if this height change passes? Okay, I've asked 3 questions from the audience. Does anybody else want to take a stab at those? I mean, I guess they're all subjective, right? Anybody else want to answer those 3? What taxes will taxes go up because of this if it passes? Anybody want to stab at it? Yes.
Okay. In my view, the likelihood is that may happen because if you don't have smart growth and smart development around the city that helps pay for, through all the fees that developers pay out of their pocket to the city in order to develop, if that doesn't happen, as I think Mr. Massey has correctly said, the cost of living keeps going up. There's no way to stop. I mean, that's an issue that we have to face. Everybody in this room faces that. And there's only one final arbiter of or final source for that, and that's the taxpayers. And my view is if we don't have responsible development, underline that word, responsible, and go through all of the processes that there is existing now to provide protections for responsible development, the likelihood is with police still need and the streets still need to be paved and corrected and the water still needs to run and the toilets need to flush and not council members, but directors and workers that make this city work and go so well, they need to have pay raises and the cost of construction goes up. So I can only find one other source other than if there is responsible development. If it's not responsible development, the opposite of that is stagnation. And that will happen, in my view, and the taxpayers will have to fund that because we still need to run government. And as Mr. Massey has said very clearly through his analysis of the budget growth over the years, that's going to happen. Well, why not have responsible development pay for that instead of taxpayers?
Thank you.
Okay. We have two more subject matters. Both are equally important. Hopefully you'll be around. We still have a couple more minutes here. So the first one is John Tucker, solving our parking problem.
Okay, thank you, and I'll try to pick up the pace just a little bit because I know the hour and the time is late. First off, let me tell you two things, though. One, I'm not here to be a gun bearer for the company that tried to build a parking garage and submitted a bid. Mr. Massey kind of addressed that issue, and that company can handle and fight their own battles. So I'm not here to be a gun bearer for them, so don't think anybody out there think that. The second thing I want to say, and I happened to read this the other day, and I agree with it. This proposition that the citizens will be voting on does not prohibit building a parking garage. It doesn't prohibit it. You can build a parking garage. But now let's look at a parking garage, okay? Back in 2015, the Renaissance Planning Group was asked by the city to look at our parking problem. They did. They studied it, they put a report out, they said, downtown Mount Dora has 720 parking spaces. Our parking garage has 78 parking spaces. Unfortunately, Mount Dora in 2015 needed 1,006 for the Renaissance Group. So we were already short 230 spaces in 2015. The Renaissance Group also asked a number of anybody who wanted to, please take our survey. And they had 883 people respond to the survey. One of the questions was about describe looking for a parking space in Mount Dora. 60% said it was either frustrating or just beyond hope. They were no way, they were totally flabbergasted by looking for a parking space. And that, again, is 7 years ago. The Renaissance Group did a very nice report. They submitted it to the city, and I'm not going to bore you with what they recommended, but they had long-term solutions, short-term solutions, and midterm solutions. But in all their solutions, they said, for Mount Dora to achieve any sort of success with parking, look at a public-private partnership. Okay? There was a reason for that, and that was part of that reason was cost involved. Mount Dora has approximately 16,000 residents as of today. Per the Chamber of Commerce, we have over 1 million visitors a year. And I leave us admit, probably 400,000 of those come to the three major events. The Craft Festival, that's this weekend, the Art Festival in February, and the Spring Show in March. So let's take 400,000 out. That leaves about 600,000 people for the rest of the year. That still breaks down to about over 1,000 people a day coming to Mount Dora. And they've got to find somewhere to park. If you look at our town, quite simple. If you read any of the history in our town, Mount Dora was built on tourism. Pure and simple. 1904, we had 6 hotels and 300 people. So either we had a lot of tourists in town or there was a lot of hanky-panky going on. One or the other. We need a parking solution. And there's a couple of things we can do for this parking solution. What always got my 4 years on council, what got brought up to me all the time, and what got brought up to me after leaving council, so many people talked about the Winter Garden parking garage. It's a beautiful parking garage. It seats 527 cars. It's 2 stories undercover, 1 story on a roof. It's 196,000 square feet. Back in 2016, when it was built, it cost $8.1 million. That's chump change today. At today's cost, and I'm being very, very, very liberal, An average parking space, if we get everything right, is $23,000 a parking space. Multiply that by 500 spaces, and it's almost $12 million. And that's today. Well, we may not need a parking garage, some people say. Let's do parking gravel lots. We can do lots. For a 500-space parking lot, we need 3.5 acres. I don't know every inch of Mount Dora, but I don't think there's a vacant 3.5 acres. When you look at what it's say a parking lot like that should cost, it's roughly $2,500 a space. Times 500 spaces, that's $1.25 million. Okay? Reasonable. Until you factor in the land. Land is going to cost what land costs. And last time I looked, land in Mount Dora was not being given away. We tried a parking lot 2 blocks from here, down on 3rd and Baker. Everybody supported it on council at that time. We gained 40 parking spaces. It only costs $800,000 or $20,000 a space. Don't ask me what went wrong, because I don't know. I just know they kept going back and back and back and back there to try to get it right. It cost $800,000, and that's the number I was given. I was on the best of terms with the city at that point, and it could have cost more. But that was $800,000. I don't have a crystal ball. Yeah, I don't know what the future brings. If the ballot question passes, we're going to be limited to a 35-foot structure as far as a parking garage goes. Okay, 35 feet. Somebody can build it. If the city builds it, it's going to cost you $12 million. But we have a public-private partnership we want to do. Now it gets tough. We have to bring in a partner, tell them, will you build us a parking garage at 35 feet? And they say, yes, I can do it, but I have to make money. How am I going to make money in a 35-foot parking garage unless it takes up a city block? And I can put something in there that makes money. Yeah, anybody that's going to partner with us expects that it's going to be a level playing field. The city's going to win, and they're going to win. And that's the way a public-private partnership has to work. It's not charity. A company that has the expertise to come in and build a parking garage, and they can do it, however they want to do it, but they expect to make a profit on it in the long run. Maybe they want stores in there. Maybe they want something in there, shops, residences. I don't know. But there's got to, when we think there has to be some give and take. And if there is no give and take, because if we have a 35-foot limit, the developer has 2 choices. And you've heard those choices several times tonight already. Developer can apply for a variance and only get to 40 feet, and that may or may not work. Or they can start up their own little petition drive and try to get the height limit in town changed. What company is going to sit here and wait and do their own petition drive so they can build us a parking garage? Please, answer that question for me. Our debt in town, for 3 fire stations, we borrowed $22 million. For a public works building, we borrowed $11 million. At least we've started in one of the fire stations. The money that was borrowed for the public works building almost 4 years ago, we haven't even turned a shovel over. The city now wants to build a community building in the Northeast, which is long overdue. They also managed to say in the last meeting that they wanted to do almost $800,000 in improvements to City Hall. Our debt right now, in just those little items, is between $35 and $40 million. If we're going to have anything, it has to be, a public-private partnership has to be entertained and brought in. Again, at $23,000 a space, and that may be low, are we going to have a, if the city does it itself, are we going to have a city assessment fee for parking? We've got one for fire. Are they going to have one for parking? I don't know. Again, I don't have a crystal ball. I really don't. But I do know when I was on council, during the 4 years I served there, I prided myself on researching everything that I was going to vote on. I also prided myself on talking to residents. I'm not saying I agreed with all of them, but any resident that wanted to talk to me, I talked to and I reached out to various residents, not knowing what they were going to, how they were going to respond. But I listened to them, did my homework, and then voted accordingly. And what I thought was best for this city from all that input and knowledge that I was trying to gather. What I'm very concerned with, but let me back up just a second. I will tell you that any time I voted, and you can ask, I shared council with four of the members up here. We didn't all vote alike. At different times, I disagreed with Mayor Jerome. At different times, I disagreed with Mr. Ralston. At different times, I may have disagreed with Harmon Massey. But who could disagree with Harmon Massey when he gets talking with that voice? Yeah. If I ever will.
Have you met my wife?
I have. But what I say, I knew what the results were supposed to be on anything I voted on, pro or con. What I don't know is if we go to the polls on the 8th, I don't know what the unintended results of passing this ordinance will be. I really don't. And the unintentional consequences can be devastating to this city. Maybe I'm wrong and there will be no unintentional consequences, but for one, am not willing to roll the dice. But what I would ask each of you to do, though, I've researched it, I've read it, I would like you to research it. Come up with your own questions. And then when you vote on what you've learned, not on anything you've been told, not on emotion. Vote from a point of what you think you know, what you've read, what you understand. And if there's anything there that you think bothers you in the long run, could this happen? If A and B meet, are we going to get C or we're going to get W and X and Y? If you don't know the answer, I would question whether or not you should vote for the proposition. So I thank you for your time. I thank you for being here tonight. And thank you.
Okay, so this, again, I'm presuming this person, as a lot of people I have heard, don't really understand what this is all about. But if this passes, when can we expect a car garage to be built? Give us a time frame.
I would say when...
And I'm not saying this to be rude to whoever wrote this question, but this seems to be the issue, is that many people really don't understand what the charter's about. So thank you for taking the time to explain it, John.
I can write a check for $12 million tomorrow. It's not going to clear, but it's, when we've got the money, that's when you can build a garage.
Okay.
Now, is it a public-private partnership? That's what we have to enter into, or will the citizens pay for it? That's the choice.
Okay, thank you, John. All right, so one of the last things that we're going to talk about tonight, and I hope you stick around for just a couple minutes longer, is Leslie Campione and property rights. So Leslie, please go ahead and start, and then we'll move forward.
All right, I'll jump right in. The question about property rights is really a question of will the city be sued if this charter amendment is adopted? Because that's really what it comes down to when we're talking about property rights. So we all know that lawyers are really good at arguing both sides of an issue. And when that issue involves something as specialized as Florida property rights law, the key is not if you can find two differing opinions, but rather, are there two differing opinions from highly respected, knowledgeable, and experienced lawyers in this field? In this case, we have just that. I've seen two preliminary legal opinions by two extremely accomplished and knowledgeable lawyers that reach different conclusions about whether the city will be sued and the extent that the city would be subjected to damages. So the short answer is yes. I think it's pretty clear, based on my reading of the charter in relation to what the current regulations are in the city code, that the city will in fact be sued, probably more than by one property owner. And yes, the potential for substantial damages is very, very real. The concept of property rights is something I find very compelling and inherent in our American form of government from a constitutional standpoint and also from a morality standpoint. The idea that the government can't take your property or damage your property without paying you just compensation. In Florida, our legislators value this concept so much that they adopted a unique property rights law called the Burt-Harris Private Property Rights Act. This act was adopted in 1995, and then it was amended in 2021 to give property owners a greater chance of prevailing in cases where local laws were changed or permits were denied. And the case law has given us some guidance as to how this law would apply in a case like this. Now it is no longer necessary under the Burt-Harris Act for an application to actually be denied. You can bring a Burt-Harris private property rights claim if a law is changed and that law impacts your property and damages your overall value or your potential value, what you might be able to do with your property if that is taken away. So the question is, does this charter amendment take away an existing right previously afforded to property owners in Mount Dora in the downtown district and on the waterfront? And do inconsistent interpretations of the current law contribute to the chances that the city may lose its case if this charter amendment is challenged in court? I think the answer is yes. I think it takes away existing rights that exist under the current law. And I do believe that inconsistent interpretations through the years of the current laws actually would result in the most lenient interpretation occurring, which would increase the damages of the property owner that makes the challenge. Of course, I've heard proponents of the charter change state that this charter amendment is no different than the limits that already exist in our land development regulations. And I've been told by many people who signed the petition to bring this forward that they were told that nothing would change, which is why they signed the petition. They were told, well, hey, it's already the law, sign the petition, we just want to codify this and put it in the charter. But it isn't really true what they were told. What's being voted on is actually very different than the current provisions. And some of the speakers tonight have talked about that. And one of the key things is that there is a variance procedure. The variance procedure is not an easy procedure to go through. It involves public meetings, but it is available. And there's also a PUD process for planned unit developments where you can look at the characteristics of the property, the type of use that's being proposed, and you can actually weigh out and negotiate concessions, which might allow you to go over the 35 feet, but you would look at things like, what are the adjoining buildings? What are the sizes of those buildings? And are you going to block someone's view? Those types of things are taken into consideration. Is there something unique about the topography of that property? Maybe it's on a slope, so that it's sort of like a split level. How do you figure out? Do you average in a situation like this? And through the years, the city council and the variance board, they've had different ways of looking at that. For example, what if you wanted to have gables on your building? And so you had a peak of your roof was actually taller than 35 feet. Would you average if it was lower in other areas? Those are the kind of things that have been interpreted through the years. This charter amendment takes all of that out of the equation. There is no leeway. There is no case-by-case review. There is no due process for the applicant. It's a hard and fast rule. And the variance provision that was put into the charter language, again, it's almost impossible to meet that variance, those variance provisions, and it would only allow you to deviate by 5 feet. And it's a little bit questionable whether they're only speaking about appurtenances to the building or whether they're actually giving you a little bit more as far as the height of the building. So now keep in mind, and you've heard this tonight, the tallest structure in downtown Mount Dora is 45 feet. And I heard tonight from Joe that I think his Marina actually is at 50. But the other structures that exceed 35 feet are around 42 feet. So under this criteria, you could not ask for a variance to go up to that height. And now these buildings are historical buildings. These are our oldest buildings in Mount Dora. And this is what I find ironic when I see the signs around town that say, vote yes for historic preservation. And they're talking about a standard that's different than what our history provided for us. I was walking around town, I think it was Tuesday morning early before there was anyone really downtown, and I was noticing the different variations in heights of buildings in downtown, and I encourage you to do this sometime soon before you vote. It's what makes downtown interesting is that we have some 3 stories, we have some 2, we have 1s, you know, and there is that variation. And I think that the reason we have that is because we've had this ability for our city officials and citizens and business leaders to get together and make these kind of decisions. This charter amendment takes all of that away and says, here's our hard and fast rule, you have to stick to it. But back to my topic, which was why does that set up the city for a lawsuit? The Burt-Harris Act says that if a right that you have today is taken away, even if you're not using that right, but you have the potential to use that right, that you can sue the city. And as a county commissioner, I can tell you that I've actually been involved as a defendant on behalf of the county in 2 cases under the Burt-Harris Act. Each of them involved millions of dollars, and we lost. We lost those cases. One of them was we put a weight limit on a country road where there were going to be trucks hauling sand off of property, and there was public outcry about that. We put a weight limit on it, we got sued, and I think we were out $6 million. And we had to, basically, we negotiated purchasing the property. But the thing that's so difficult on a local government with Burt-Harris is not only do you have to pay the damages, but the landowner gets to proceed and do what they asked to do. So it's a double whammy from the standpoint of the taxpayers and the city. And we all, as taxpayers, we're the ones that are going to be picking up that bill. When the county had to come up with that money, we had to get really creative, but we had to dip into reserves. That's what the city of Mount Dora would have to do. Some cities have to borrow money in order to pay those damages, but they're very real. And you know, I was talking to a friend about this who is a yes person on the charter. And she said, these are just blind threats. But they aren't blind threats. This is reality. And I think that, and the reason I wanted to talk about it is that I don't think people realize this, because I think a lot of people were asked to sign the petition and they've been told, hey, this is no different than what we have now, so what's the harm? But the harm is that we're setting the city of Mount Dora up, or they're setting the city of Mount Dora up for I think some real significant damages. Not to mention all the other factors that were talked about tonight that are really, really important factors in the big picture. So I think those are the key things that I wanted to point out tonight. I have seen and been involved in variances in Mount Dora through the years. And the kind of things that they look at are the topography, unique attributes of the property, the surrounding buildings and their heights. I mean, it's always been very well thought out, very conservative from the standpoint of they don't hand out variances very easily. And with the PUD process, there's always a really good give and take as far as what do we get for the public. And I've heard some arguments about, for example, the Pineapple Point property, if that were to be able to be developed, if a developer would actually be able to develop it by having some leeway in how it's designed, it would open up the ability for us, the public, to have access to the lake. And I think that's a dimension that is really missing in downtown Mount Dora. We have all these great things going for us, but you can't really go down and enjoy the lakefront. You can go down to the dock by the, by the yacht club, and that's about the extent of it. You can go down to the park, but to actually have part of that downtown experience, or even sort of the evening nightlife type experience where you can go down and sit near the water and go to a restaurant. There was just some really great opportunities. If we had some discretion and we left it with the city council. But from the standpoint of, are we opening up the city for a lawsuit? Absolutely. And again, I've read these legal opinions. I've read the pro and the con, both from outstanding lawyers, which means there will be a lawsuit because there will be a battle to be fought. And unfortunately, at the end of the day, I think that we all lose, and we would be better off leaving things the way they are and allowing due process to happen, allow the public to come in and comment, allow the city officials to do their job and be responsive to the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Two questions, or three questions, I'm sorry. Won't well-intentioned developers who have good plans sue to overwrite the height requirement? Override?
And that was that's essentially what my discussion was tonight.
I'm just making sure that's answered.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, they will, and not just developers. I mean, we're talking about landowners. We're talking about Joe and his family who operate the marina. And I mean, to me, it's almost a moral issue that you're like taking away these rights from a family that is so involved in our community and that is operating a business in our community. And people that have owned their land for years and years and years, and you're taking that away from them.
So from a legal standpoint, it's yes versus no. Is it true that the no group only protects the developer and the yes group is only protecting the citizens?
The no group is protecting the citizens and the landowners and our constitutional rights.
And why is the ordinance written in reverse? I only ask them, I don't write them.
Yeah, the petitioners put all of this together, so if it's confusing, I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I just urge everyone to talk to your friends and neighbors and try to get the correct information out. And there are ways to go about, I don't think anybody up here, anybody I know, wants high rises or super tall buildings in Mount Dora. We want to protect the character of Mount Dora. But you got to have some discretion and leeway and flexibility. And I think the phrase tonight, unintended consequences, that's a problem when you have super hard and fast rules like that. I think it'll stagnate the city. I think in the long run that we all lose.
Okay, and I'm sorry, one last one, which is, if this passes, okay, assuming it passes, if a building garage is approved structure but is 39 feet, does the whole city have to vote again to approve it? And how much does each referendum cost the taxpayers?
Well, actually, in that case, the only way they could go to 39 feet would be if they obtained a variance. So it wouldn't come back to the voters, but it would be based upon the variance criteria that's been written into the proposed ordinance, and I don't think anybody can ever pass that variance criteria.
Okay. Joe, anything from you? Okay, so thank you all for joining us tonight. Before you walk out, we want to say we appreciate your time you spent with us tonight. This recording, as long as it was, has been on Facebook Live. So if you're a Facebook person, feel free to share it if you think people need to hear what was said. MountDoraCitizens.com is this group's website. The video, probably in the next day or so, will be there for those of you who are not Facebook people and you would like to share it or watch it. You can let people know. Again, it's probably going to cause more questions that people will have, and that's good. And speaking of questions, I have a lot of other questions that came in via email. We'd love to get through them, and if you want to stay, we'll go through them, but I think people want to go. So what's going to happen is that this group is going to be going through all the questions that we didn't get to answer, and we'll be replaying or answering them via video on Facebook. So again, you will get the answers that if you sent in via email and you didn't get them, please feel free to keep an eye out on the Facebook page. And again, they'll do what they can to post those same videos on their website for those of you who are not Facebook people. I'd like to thank the individual speakers for their involvement tonight, and all of you who took the time to care enough to submit questions and allow the different perspectives to be discussed. And thank you to all who attended tonight. It's most importantly, we want to thank you for caring about Mount Dora's future, regardless of your position. Thank you and have a good night.
You